Hello everyone, welcome to another look at my old superhero drawings that I did throughout my childhood. Hopefully you've seen the episodes before this, so we'll be able to just jump right on in here. Where we left off in the W's here, our next entry is Wonder Boy. Wonder Boy was a very minor character. His story was that he wanted to join a superhero team. I don't remember which one it was. But he was kind of like a street urchin type character, and he approached the team, and I think it might have been one of the branches of that European team that was going to actually be like 3 or 4 teams that were all connected. Um, anyway, he like got these goggles and this jacket, and he was going to be a superhero, and he tried to become like a sidekick character, and basically his story involves eventually it costing him his life, but. In losing his life, he does like save the day, and it was supposed to be like a heartbreaking, touching type thing. Um, but yeah, so he just had the one story focused on him. I don't think it would have been drawn out to more than one like chapter or whatever. I think it would have just been like that story. He tries to join the team, and by the end, he's gone. But because of his like heroic sacrifice, he's like posthumously made like an honorary member of the team and whatever, and that was the whole idea there. Moving on to Rex. Rex was one of the characters I remember better from that superhero group that I was working on in college. The one that I keep mentioning I don't remember well because I wasn't as invested in what I was doing at the time. So I wrote a bunch of stuff down, but I don't remember it nearly as well as the stuff I made when I was a kid. But Rex was basically a Colossus type character. He was supposed to be the muscle of the group for most of its run. And that's really kind of it. He was a big, strong guy covered in metal. And I think, like Colossus, I think he could take it on or off. But that's basically it for Rex. Not too much to him. Zorn here, I've mentioned his family a few times here, but if you remember Mesmera and Matthew and Harold that we've talked about before, this is Mesmera's husband. I mentioned he would be further back, and his name is why. I don't remember the origin for Zorn. It might have come from an X-Men character. I can't remember what that character's name was for sure, but anyway, he had like a telekinetic power. And then, like Mesmera had the more hypnotic type power or the trance-inducing power. He could move things around with his mind, and he was like a kind of a brainiac character, like a sort of like Reed Richards in terms of personality, where he was kind of aloof and distant and not the most reliable person, but his heart was in the right place. He was just too caught up in working on things like these nifty gauntlets that help him to do his power, because I don't think his power was technology based. Otherwise, it wouldn't make sense for like him and his wife to have kids that would make stronger by being the children of 2 psychics. But I think the gauntlets were to help him control it or something like that. I don't know about the big light on his chest. I probably just thought that looked cool. But yeah, that's Zorn. Him and his wife would have had a lot of adventures before retiring, and then eventually giving way to Matthew and Harold, who would eventually become Scion, if you recall from the other episodes. Zoroaster is another member of that group that Rex was in that we were just talking about. I don't remember too much about him. I think he was meant to be like a gadgeteer type. I don't think he had superpowers, or if he did, it was just like an increased intelligence. And that might have been it. He might have been based off of Richie from the later seasons of Static Shock, where it turns out that he did have like a super genius type power. It just wasn't as obvious because being smart isn't usually considered a superpower, but being able to invent things at a really rapid pace kind of is. And I think it might have been something along the lines with Zoroaster, but he was the brains of that group basically. And I have no idea where the name came from. I don't remember at all. I think he's our last one. So, with that out of the way, the last stretch, we are now officially into the villains. Now, with the villains in this, basically, I made villains as I needed them, like as I came up with stories for villains or with whatever, then I would make them. Usually it just came down to which superheroes I was thinking of the most, and then they got villains, and then I would make more villains while I was writing. Presumably, that was the plan. So, most of these villains had a plan, unlike a lot of the heroes where I just had like an aesthetic thing. But I may not remember all of them. I can't make you any promises. For instance, Archerus here. I remember she was part of a villain group at one point, but I think she might have she was probably meant to be like the arch rival of Eagle Eye and Seraph, who are the two Archer heroes. But she would also go on to join like a villainous group. I remember that. I don't remember many details about the group, but I remember she was definitely supposed to do that after, I guess probably after her storyline wrapped up with Eagle Eye, whatever it would be. I think the more I think about it, the more I think she was probably meant to be like a Catwoman type figure for him, like a definitely an enemy, but also there was like a romantic thing. I don't know. I think there was probably be some interesting things I could do with that, especially with when Eagle Eye takes in the teenage sidekick who he takes sort of a fatherly role to. I think there could be some interesting weird family dynamics there, even though him and Archerus weren't a couple or anything. I think there would be some storytelling potential there now that I'm thinking about it, but I don't remember how big my plans got at the time. Moving on, Angel. So, Angel here was a character. I had the idea to make a supervillain group that each member had one of Superman's powers. And I think the idea was for them to be a rival for Ultraman before I really knew what I was doing with Ultraman. Like before the Superheroes of America were an idea. And he was just a Superman ripoff. Because there was the point in time where he was just Superman. And I think the idea was to have, somebody with each of his powers, and he had the same powers as Superman. So obviously she was Flight. She had their powers were all given to them by like a single scientist who like hired them. So they were like regular people that were given like artificial powers through machinery and science and whatever. So she's got these big robot wings. Obviously, if I was going to do this character today, the wings would look better than this. It's just, I don't know how these would even work. But like I guess they're just big lighter wings that have rockets on the back of them. I think it would be cooler to have some kind of really cool looking wings or something. These big metal robot wings for her. But yeah, so she didn't have a lot of thought put into it beyond that because she was just a superpower for that gimmick of that team. And hopefully I'll remember who the other members of that group were when we get to them. I don't know. Because I know I did have a member for each superpower. But we'll see if I can remember them all. Brian Angel here was a character who was going to be integral to Shadow's storyline. And I think he was really Shadow's arch rival. But he is this guy who started out befriending Shadow's civilian persona. I think after he was unmasked, and so he befriends him and becomes like a confidant to him. And then eventually it's revealed that this whole time he's been running this deep underground type criminal organization, and has just been like trying to keep Shadow off of him and off of his trail. And like the criminal organization was actually like he had like I don't think it was a world conquest goal, but I think he was militarizing this group, and he was kind of unstable was the idea. And eventually Shadow would take him down, and the idea I think was to give him a superpower later. Like after Viglanium came in, he would get a superpower and become a big rival to one of the newer heroes at that point when he's older. But I don't remember what the power would have been or anything like that. I mostly remember that he was supposed to be like just like this super genius criminal, and that was the whole idea, was that he was able to run a huge criminal organization that Shadow didn't even have any clue about until eventually he managed to uncover it. Yeah, so that was Brian Angel. I had big plans for him. It would take a little bit too long to get into all of the details about him and Shadow's relationship, but that's the basic overall idea. Aquatic Rogue. Why did I name her Aquatic Rogue? Okay, so she was like a water-based villain. I think probably for Tsunami. And I don't think she had superpowers. I think she just swam well and did like, I don't know. I think she was just like a Black Manta type character, but she had swimming goggles. I don't know. This character is lame. I would really want to redo her from the ground up if I was going to do anything with this today. But this is just I didn't know what I was doing when it came to water characters, and that's why like Tsunami and Aquatic Rogue here are so lame. Because I didn't know what I was doing. I just felt like I needed to have them. Azure is a character who her power is basically like a Green Lantern power. I know that's not conveyed well here. I don't like this. It's supposed to be like an energy construct she makes, and Azure is the color of the constructs that she can make, a la Green Lantern. And that was mostly it. I don't remember what hero she was supposed to fight. I think she would probably have jumped around to different ones. But I wanted to have a character with that power, but I didn't think. By that point, I was pretty sure if I did do a hero with that power, like just the Green Lantern power, it would be too transparent because it's kind of a specific power. But if I did a villain with it, I thought I could do something new and different. But I don't remember too much about what I had planned with her beyond that power. Beauty, trying to remember her deal. So, Beauty, I know Beauty had like super strength, and that was her thing. Was that she like, I think she might have been like a model or something like that, and that's where her name comes from. But she had super strength, and I think was mostly like somebody who would be like hired muscle for villains with bigger goals and bigger ambitions. I don't remember her having any specific goals or anything she was trying to do other than just make money. But she did it on. She worked for the bad guys, and that's why she's on this side. But I remember she was gonna be. She had like bright pink hair, I think, and I thought she was pretty cool. But yeah, that's Beauty. Behemoth. I'm pretty sure Behemoth was the super strength of that group I was talking about. I think he was. And his is less of a like robotic part stuck on him like Angel's was, and more just like a super steroid type thing, maybe some kind of like knockoff of what was used to make like Captain Amazing. And I guess the Avenger was the other character that I had been thinking of, because I never saw another one who I remembered like, oh yeah, this was the scientist that created. Maybe Stryker, now that I think about it. I'm sorry to go back like this, but now that I'm thinking about it, that might have been the plan with Stryker, because I had two different origin stories for the Avenger, and the Avenger's name didn't make sense if he was just a scientist that invented a super serum, but I think that was Stryker's deal, was that he was the guy that invented the serum that made Captain Amazing, and he was trying to make this super serum before Vibranium was discovered. Then once Vibranium was discovered, it was easier to just use that to try and create superpowers than to use his expensive, time-consuming serum. So he used it on himself and became a superhero, and that was Stryker. So sorry about this, like going backwards, but I just remembered when I was thinking about it, that was his deal. But I did have at one point the Avenger, or as he was called when I was much younger, the Purple Avenger. We saw all the way back in episode 1. Had two different origin stories. One was the one I said in that episode, and one was the one I just said for Stryker. And then I made Stryker so somebody else could have that origin story. Sorry about that. But so Behemoth probably like maybe the scientist that was making this created like a some kind of hybrid between that serum and the serum that was used to make Henshin, who you remember was like the Hulk, to create something that's kind of in between the two, and that's Behemoth. But again, Behemoth was like a big muscle guy, and he was just part of that group of people who had all of Ultraman's superpowers. Johnny Blight. Okay, I think Johnny Blight, I really liked this image. But he's a cyborg, obviously. He's got robotic parts, robotic arms and robotic eyes, probably robotic legs too. I would guess. It's hard to tell, he's got these pants on, but I would assume. And Basically, probably a lot of robotics work in like his spine and stuff to help augment him further. But yeah, he wasn't like a huge deal, but he was a superhero or a super he was a supervillain who would just like do like common crime type things, but uses his abilities to try and get away with them, I guess. But he didn't have really big plans. He just pulled off like heists and things like that, as I recall. But he was British, I remember, and he was for like the European superheroes to fight. Blink. Blink was supposed to be like an anti-villain type character. So she was a teen girl who somehow or another was exposed to vibranium. I don't remember how. But her power was teleportation, and it worked. It worked in a way similar to like really old movies when a character would teleport, where they would just be there and then they would make a cut and they wouldn't be there. There's no like flash or anything. Just suddenly they're not there. And you might would hear like a popping sound as the air rushed in to fill the space where she was, and she would teleport somewhere else. And hence the name. But she was like impoverished or like had like a sick mother or something, and she was basically using her powers to steal, but for good reasons. And so she was supposed to be really sympathetic, because like she wasn't using her powers selfishly so much as just trying to like even out her life and her family's life. But it got her into trouble, and that was sort of the deal with Blink. And I don't remember if she had stories past that initial one, like after she was caught or whatever, or if she even was caught. I don't know. With a power like hers, I don't know how you would restrain her, other than like keeping her sedated or something really inhumane like that. So it's possible she just got away and was able to hide after her initial encounter. I think I like that ending better, since she's not malevolent or particularly evil. Unlike Blue Skull. So Blue Skull is originally is presented as a romantic interest for Shadow. Shadow's got a lot of characters in here because he was the one I spent the most time thinking about. He's got the most villains in here, I think. But she was another character who kind of saddled up to his civilian persona after it became well known, and was presented as like a romantic rival to his main love interest, who was the reporter that he eventually married, that I talked about when we were on his page. And eventually it's revealed that she's more like a hit woman and was hired and contracted to take him out. But she does kind of like him. I don't know if she loves him, but I know that she decided not to just outright kill him, and is kind of like a back and forth type character who kind of would help him sometimes and would not help him at other times. She might have worked for what was his name? I can't remember his first name. Brian Angel. Yeah, she might have worked for Brian. I don't know, but and the more I think about it, the more I think, yeah, I think it was probably him that hired her, though he wouldn't have been revealed as the mastermind yet at that point. Speaking of Shadow, Boston Bomber here was the very first supervillain that would be introduced in this world, in that he's the person that Shadow takes down in Shadow's debut story. The Boston Bomber was a serial bomber. He would bomb buildings. It would eventually be revealed that he was actually like a member of the Boston Fire Department, or something like that. But he would be setting up the bombs in a way that was actually make him more of an arsonist than a bomber. And he wasn't bombing the buildings as a statement or anything. He was doing it as a covert way to create arson, because he had a pyromaniac thing going on. But in his first confrontation with Shadow before he's captured, he gets all this scarring due to debris falling on him. He wasn't able to get away from the building before it came down. But eventually he would be caught and locked away, and then he wouldn't appear again for a long time. But there's a character we'll meet later who has the power to give other people powers, and part of his storyline involved giving superpowers to a lot of unpowered villains from this era. And one of them is Boston Bomber, who he gives basically the ability to create explosions. So that brings Boston Bomber back as like a more serious threat at that point. And I think he would have more adventures with the newer crop of heroes at that point in the future. Kind of like Brian Angel, except I don't think Brian Angel was somebody that was supposed to be given powers that way. I think he got them a different way. You know what? I just looked at the time, and I think we'll have to come back. Obviously, I had some characters with the theme here. I don't think these characters were even connected or related. They just had similar designs because I'm not very creative. And it's funny they ended up next to each other. But we'll start next week talking about these two, and then we'll keep going from there. So hopefully you guys are still finding these interesting. I'm hoping a lot of these villains, because there's quite a few left to go through here, are going to be interesting to you guys. So if you want to see more of the villainous side of this universe, come on back next week and we'll talk about them some more. Bye.